question.
Well, I've got my nephew's getting married in America, so I'm going to go. Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, we go. No, we don't.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Policy Development and Scrutiny Committee Bill at Swindon. It is 6 o'clock, so I am the lead start. Thank you to all members, officers, and anybody online for joining us. Just a few things before we move on to the agenda. First of all, is in the event of a fire alarm, everyone should immediately leave the building to the nearest door and assemble in the car park near the client's house. And the Wi-Fi for the password is green shine level, all lowercase, all one word. First item is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Gailford and Councillor Anna Figaro, secretising, which will be arriving soon. And Councillor Rebecca has also sent apologies, Councillor Jamie Barry, secretising, and Councillor Ian Edwards has also.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those declaring. And the second item is declarations of interest. Can I remind members that you should declare any known interest in any matter to be considered? And may I also remind members that you should also make a declaration should it become apparent during the meeting that you have an interest in the matter being discussed. Do we have any declarations of interest? Thank you. Public question time. We haven't got any written public question, and I don't see any public in here present, so I guess there are no public questions. Or which is where to support young people who are not in education, employment, or training. We've all had the presentation with the agenda, and we do have Councillor Honourable Sheikh as the cabinet member and Sally Bennett who will be presenting in here. So over to either yourself, Councillor Sheikh, or Sally Bennett, who on wish to make a start.
Thank you for that introduction. I'd just like to pass my thanks to everyone for including this in today's agenda. I mean, this is one of the many firsts that we have with the Swindon. The report is very detailed and concise, and as far as we can go, we try to avoid use of acronyms. But if there are any that have been missed, please do feel free to ask any questions as we go along. It also has data graphs, which we will be sharing in today's report that will be presented by Sally. So I'll hand over to Sally, but feel free to ask any questions as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just give a sort of high-level overview of what I've included in the report and then give you opportunity for questions and discussion. So we've got the written report here, and apologies, I think we missed out to send earlier than today the appendix, which was the report that we did on the deep dive for care experience in 2024. So happy to take any questions on that. I've referred to that in this paper as a summary that you might have questions. So this report gives an overview of the work that we've done to support young people who are not in education and training. And we've got a few statutory things around this. So the first one that I'm reporting on is the position and work for all our young people who are 16 to 18. But I'm also then referring specifically to our care experience, work to support our care experience, and work specifically to support young people with special educational needs and disabilities as well. And so the committee is asked to note the work that's been undertaken and also to identify and address any questions and areas of concern that may require further information, scrutiny, and further recommendations. So just an overview then of positions. The tables that you've got are, they're always a lag, always a couple of months out of date. So I have just brought verbally, and I can send these in tables to you. Did Councillor Shaker just ask for the very latest March data, which I'll give you as well. So just a highlight really position for all 16 to 18-year-olds. So as the table 1 shows, overall we've got 87.4% of that cohort, that overall cohort, which is over 5,000 in learning, and that means in some sort of education training or work with training, doesn't include work with training. And then we've got these NEET and unknowns, so they lump them together, but really we need to look at them separately. It's a separate issue. So NEET, as of January, was 3%, and not knowns is 8.7%. And so really comparing ourselves with national, something with the in-learning figures over the last few years has meant that that has reduced and is slightly below national average. The NEETs, as always say, has been on par with national, but this not known figure is been a problem in the last year. You will see from table 2 that overall in the last 3 years our not knowns has reduced. We have improved them, but this year we've had a new data system which has meant, so the not known figure is all about confirming the destination. It's really quite a sort of a process where young people leave year 11 and year 12, and you've got to confirm the destination. You can't help them if you don't know where they are or what they're doing. And the data system has meant that that has been problematic this year. The introduction of a new data system has meant that we have had some glitches in the system. Some things haven't worked quite as we expected them to, but those glitches and those issues are being addressed. And there is a clear plan with our children's services, one of our data leads, leading that with synergy, and another area that's implemented. I said I'd just give you an indication of how that data at March, now just the month gone, March 2025, and the figure that we were particularly interested, Councillor Shaker and I, looking at is that non-known figure that has reduced again to 6.2. So that does show that we're doing, that those things that are being put in place to improve that data is working, but there is still more to do. So it gives us some assurance that it is reducing, but still that is higher, as you can see, compared this year to those other years than we would like it. We always aim to have it at least below 3%. But that does mean, and as we unpick what those not knowns are doing, some of those were in learning, because in learning in March has gone up to 89.4%. So 2% of those were in learning, and then a few of those were NEET's gone up from 3 to 3.5%. So in summary, that shows an improved position, but still more work to do on the unknowns. It does also mean that we do have at present 207 young people who are in need, and that will always be too many for us, as we know. So yeah, we need to continue to do that work to reduce those needs, and I'm going to talk through some of those strategies. Some of those are operational, but a lot of them are more strategic and also national kind of things that we can do to improve that. There are some tables there that might help, with showing those pictures as well. And then in terms of the 16 to 18 SEND and our young people for whom we care for. The neat picture for the SEND group, interestingly, one of the trends that you'll see in this data generally is that our overall in sort of numbers need or in learning for year 12 and 13. Year 12 is usually more positive than year 13. So we do better at young people progressing from year 11 into year 12. And then it's challenging for us, for those young people who do a one-year course, then to progress further and keep in learning until they are 18. And that's a sort of national aim and local aim, is to make sure they maximise the benefit, they have the maximum benefit from that sort of that opportunity. But with for those young people we send, we have high numbers in learning in year 13. So there's a bit of a difference in trend for those with an education, health and care plan. There are higher numbers of young people who are a child looked after. So I put the actual figures in the report, but in year 12 it's 16% and slightly higher at 23% in year 13. So what are we doing to reduce the numbers of young people who need unknowns? So I've talked a little bit about the unknowns. What we're really trying to do is make that process of confirming destinations more efficient so that the small team we have got can spend more time on supporting the needs. That's absolutely the aim. And as I said, this year has been a bit of a challenge because it has meant that we've had to do quite a lot of manual work. But we've increased the number of in our team. So initially it started with 3, got 5 people in the team doing this work now, and also have done a range of things which I'll sort of talk through. And improving the sort of efficiency of the data has been one thing. So working with our schools also, we've got some joint duties. So schools under their guidance, information and advice have got particular duties on destinations as well. So we'll work with our schools to share that information more efficiently so we're not duplicating. And we've got each of our advisors got like an account manager of each of them are linked to a school to improve that information sharing, which has worked really well. And the other thing that has been a particular issue this year has been ensuring that all our young people can access education opportunity. So in Swindon, we have got, in some ways it's an opportunity, but there's quite a few challenges with having just one main large provider of New College Swindon, which we've got a really good relationship with and very good joint working and partnership. But we've only got one main large provider. We've got a couple of very small providers, particularly with people with the HCPs locally in terms of training providers. And then we've got our special schools. But one thing that has happened this year is that there was a huge demand for courses, which they weren't, and not everyone applied in a timely way. So when September came, we had a waiting list of young people to college, which is not where we want to be. So we've done quite a significant piece of work with the college. So every further education college will start their curriculum planning in the autumn. So they invited us to start working with them on their curriculum planning, looking at our children looked after, our SEND group, our NEET group, and our wider group of young people where courses are popular or they haven't been able to meet demand. And so they have done a big piece of work to review their curriculum and respond to what is needed. There are some challenges around courses like construction and motor vehicle because they can't magic up space or magic up specialist tutors. It's mainly space, but they have done a significant amount of work to address that, which is great. And the other sort of things that I just wanted to mention was that, the virtual school here is a high-performing virtual school, I'm sure, and you will get reports about virtual school if you haven't already. And they ensure they have a dedicated officer to work with all the 16 to 18 young people who are at risk. And so compared to sort of other areas, they perform well in terms of need. And they've been focusing on getting the right provision and have commissioned some additional provision, for example, from SMASH for mentoring, from the tuition service for some individual functional skills, maths, English, employability, preparation for the next step for those young people. And then I've talked about working with New College, and then talking also about the service recently merging with a virtual school. So, as you know, as a transforming council, we are always looking at where we can join teams together to make us more efficient and effective and looking at the join-ups. So we have joined up our meet service with the virtual school. The virtual school do a lot of work, obviously, to do that, got a lot of experience. And we are reviewing the resource that we need across that whole area to make sure that we maximise our funding, our resources as well. I'm going to move on now just to look at transition generally for this group to employment and apprenticeships, and also some national work. As we develop, part of my role is to develop, which I've included in the report, the skills strategy. We are looking sort of more strategically as what is happening in Swindon around our young people, particularly, and our adults having progression to work. So there's a big national piece of work called Get Britain Working, which really clearly outlines some of the issues faced by young people around clear pathways to employment, and also around some of the services not being as person-centred and as inclusive as they could. So what that does is challenge us on how we're working with our young people, how we're working across the council, the job centre, National Career Service and other agencies. And we, in the next 6 months, have got to do a Get Swindon Working Plan in partnership with our functional economic area, which is Wiltshire at the moment, and with the DWP, Job Centre ultimately, and with our integrated care board colleagues, because one of the things we're doing is looking at the impact on health, and we've discussed with you all before the impact on mental health with some of our young people. So that there's a national programme, but also asking us to ensure that we have more integrated processes. And we are looking with the job centre and those colleagues at what will help us with making sure what young people are telling us is they don't have a clear pathway to work. We support them in their education, and to be honest, the most those young people who can compete well for jobs and apprenticeships do well, but we're still leaving some of our young people behind. So we want very clear pathways to employment, and I'm going to talk to you about some of those things that we are implementing. So one of the things that we are now developing with new government money from the DWP is this Connect to Work programme, which is supported employment, which is up to £4 million a year across the area over 5 years to address that, which will come into place from September. It will be built up. And then, and I've talked about this, I'll refer to it here as the health and work plan, but they're saying it's going to be Get Swindon, Get Wherever Working Plan. And then we're also, as I said, working in partnership with the job centre and others, because I think we really, I mean, this will be confirmed by what young people and others are telling us as the sort of engagement work we're doing as part of the skills strategy. But what we're observing is people don't really know where to go to get help. There's not an obvious place, visible place. It's not clear enough what the help is or where they get it. And so we're working with them to say, can we change that? We work together to develop an employment and skills hub, ultimately, somewhere people know where to go to get help when it's a bit more. And that's something that we're working on, looking at where we can increase capacity. I said I'd talk a little bit about the deep dive into our care experience. So I'm dividing up the sort of 16 to 18 with the 19 to 25 because it fits under different legislation and different accountabilities. So the accountability ultimately for the care experience young people sits with us within social care and within my service jointly. We work together. So these are young care leavers, 19 to 25, where nationally and locally the numbers need to high. And we know they're high because why they're high, because we did the deep dive. And we, in the paper, that in the summary that I gave you, a lot of these young people have got mental health issues. They haven't got the qualifications or the experience of work to support them into work, and they've got other personal or confidence with the resilience issues. So we did a deep dive and looked at every one of the Meet young people, which was, really positive and really interesting. I think for me, a really good joint piece of work across the teams to pull things together, and then presented to the Corporate Parenting Board last year, outlining our recommendations, and the key recommendations were included then in the corporate parenting strategy. I did want to just say a word on the data, because in table 6 you'll see that the blue line is what we report on. So we tend to report on all our care experience that we work with up to 25, but actually the national measure is young people, not that snapshot of young people 19 to 21. And as I say to my colleagues, we shouldn't be comparing apples with pears, because if we're comparing that blue line to the national measure, we're not helping ourselves. We should be, we need to, and that national measure is just an annual snapshot measure. But it does show, when you look at that annual snapshot measure, that actually year on year we're improving. But if you look at the whole cohort, the 22 to 25-year-olds, including them, they can be our most challenging, because we haven't managed to succeed in getting them into work or anything in those earliest teens. My experience of going through that 100 is they're more challenging as they get older. So the message for that is we've got to address and make sure we support them to be successful as early as possible, and hence some of the recommendations around, we do really well to keep them in education up to 18, and that's why the virtual school is having a bigger role. Is if we're doing well, then we've got to keep doing well, and not then hand over to our virtual and to our care leaver team, and not keep supporting them within the education team, hence us putting an advisor in the team. So we did a range of things as part of that. I mean, I did a lot of work to unpick some of the joint working with the job centre. The job centre has got particular duties for care experience. So we've sorted out the sharing of information, the working together and joint working. As I indicated there, we put an EAT advisor into the team to work with them, and have now worked with 62 of those young people with some good outcomes, not brilliant outcomes, but good outcomes in terms of engagement and progression. We've had some funding from Wiltshire Community Fund. This has been interesting, actually. This isn't a huge amount of money. This was 15k, but what the team says is it allowed people to do small bits of training or preparation for work that wasn't funded in another way, which has really helped progression in people. Improving the pathway plan, so making sure the whole team talk about work and employment or career aspirations, improving those discussions. And then we are also now, we put in place a range of new provision for this group. So New College Swindon has put on some new provision, key performance training / the platform project. So we've got a cohort of young people going through that. And also we were successful with some funding to do a pilot this year, so some paid internships. And we've just interviewed 9 young people. We've got that starting in May. That's the first time we've done that, and it is a pilot where we want to learn. We've got, I think we're going to do 4 and 4. We've got 8 young people who are really keen to work in Swindon Borough Council as a training offer and to learn. And so we report back to the outcome of that after the year and make recommendations for future years. So that's where they will have 15 hours a week of paid work with training and a job coach as well, and support from their personal advisor. I think people are generally really keen to see how that goes. It is something that we've wanted to do for some time as part of our parenting responsibilities. And the head of corporate parenting now has taken over that piece of work I did last year. So my role as head of skills is to support and make sure that I have that overview of the national picture, and I'm able to bring in new resources and work strategically with other agencies. But Ruth has taken on that piece of work now and is making real progress with the team to follow that on. And so the working group is continuing, and also she is continuing with that work to work with the personal advisors to review on a regular basis what progress they are making for that panel. But it is making sure that we are having high ambitions for people and reviewing those regularly. And then finally, I put something in now on the skills strategy work. So as I said earlier, this is really about, making sure the system is working for our young people, using those opportunities that are nationally. And the leader with Councillor Sheikh is working with officers on that to engage stakeholders, residents, so that we understand from their perspective what's happening. And young people are going to be a key element of that, as we know. We look at all the, stats around what is happening with employment and skills for all groups. It is young people in terms of being unemployed up to 25, not so much the 16 to 18 ones, but the 18 to 25s who need some focus. So happy to obviously to take any particular questions from that summary.
Thank you, Sally. Councillor Sheikh, do you have anything more to add, or?
I just want to say that on the skills partnership which we're trying to do we've already had the first resident survey, which was in Central Library. That was really well attended. The next one is this week. The main feedback is, like Sally mentioned, it is to support the younger people, but it's also to understand that these skills are transferable. You don't need to be just between 18 and 25 to be able to kickstart your career. You could be, someone in your mid-30s trying to understand what job I can do. How do I actually expose myself to these skills? What skills do I have right now to be able to take me 10 years forward? Because the skills we have right now might not be the job spec that is possibly going to be in demand in the next 10 to 15 years. So there's a lot of work that has been going on to be able to sort of speak about our skills strategy. I'm just glad that we would have in the report. So thank you. Maybe that's.
Thank you. Just on the unknown, I mean, obviously it's quite a significant number, 520. I just wanted to know, I mean, at what point do we actually know those unknowns? I mean, when do they actually come to our attention that these people are?
Yeah. So that's a bit about sharing the information with the schools and colleges. So we have a process for year 11 leavers and year 12 leavers. So our duty is up to the 18th birthday, but guidance suggests we do it to the end of their academic year. So we start having that duty. So if we just take a cohort, say this year's year 11 in our secondary schools, so we're in April now, we start working with the schools in January to collect what we call intended destinations. So our schools have got we set up with our schools a process with them to ensure that they're doing what they should be doing to track young people until they leave. So schools now will be providing advice and guidance. They will be collecting their intended destinations and they will be sharing them with us. And then right through the summer, we work with them on those that haven't got a firm offer. But our duty then starts when they leave, and we have to do our first report in November. So if you think of all those year 11 students, by November we've got to report on what's happened to them. So obviously some of them will go to college locally, to the sixth form, into employment, apprenticeship, and some won't have anything. And the bit that we are really working with them on is those who don't have an offer, and we're working with them earlier. So that's year 11. And then if you take year 12s, they might be in college, or they might be in the sixth forms. The same with them. We've got a duty when they leave year 12 to confirm their destination as well, right up until their 18th birthday. So it's really those two cohorts. And so as year 11 leave and still become NEET, we've got to confirm their destination, and we've got to confirm their destinations regularly based on statutory guidance. So it is, I mean, I think some people sometimes underestimate how much work that is to actually do that as per quite clear guidance of what we've got to do. So you've got to have really clear, good processes in place, a good system in place. And part of the reason we changed the IT system and were keen on it was the last system we had didn't do all the things we want to do. The capability is within this system to make it more efficient. I think it's just taken us a little while to really understand it and make sure we're using it to its maximum. Does that answer your question, Lorraine? So our duty starts when they leave year 11. So all young people that have left year 11 until their 18th birthday, we've got to say what is their destination.
And at that point, we don't know.
And the issue is that it is quite surprising in a way. We've really improved working across the council because obviously we match up with our social care database and our housing data, and all the other data. But there are still families. It's not always the families that are using our services and got particular needs. There's quite a lot of families there who the young people, that person is being supported, but they just are choosing to go their own path or do something different and don't respond to us.
Okay, but obviously I know you've mentioned that this is our statutory duty, but as an authority, don't you? In my opinion, we should go a little bit further. I know we look into it once they are in year 11, but how do we look into it while they were in year 10? All
right. So the duty for that is different. So the duty when they're in school is about attendance.
Yeah.
So and obviously the young people often that we find are neat are those young people who have been excluded or not attended or not been in their main school and have gone into other provision and have struggled to maintain full-time education. So that group, that's why there's such a focus in schools on attendance and reducing exclusions, is because really the needs is the post-16 equivalent of those not attending and those being excluded. So it is work that that's why we work closely to identify, when I was saying, from the process starts for us in terms of confirming destinations from year 11, but those at risk we work from year 10. And there's an argument that we should be working earlier, but other teams are working with them obviously all years to support them, whether that's the attendance team or the education psychology team or the SEND team.
I just wanted to add as well, Chair, we met, Natalie and myself met with the head of the virtual school, and the attendance actually of the students who attend virtual school goes above what mainstream students have. So that's advocating for the work that they're doing with the children who need so to be cared of. So I just thought that's that in context.
Thank you. So, but in terms of the need, which we are looking at the need while they were in year 10 or 11, to me, that is a little bit too late to work with them to ensure that they are having an additional provision, whether that comes to a college or employment. But how do we went a little bit back, let's say from year 9, and the teachers are in a better position to identify who is likely to be in need in year 10, 11. Do we have any mechanism to monitor those sort of?
Yeah, so one of the things that government are really keen on is us implementing what they call an at risk of need sort of risk register, where you look at a range of factors that we determine. So that's our formal process to do it. I think people that I talk to would argue we do that informally, but doing that formally is certainly something that we are asking for the framework and looking at that. So that would mean you would identify them a lot earlier. I mean, the schools in their duties will be providing information and advice, and they will be looking at those at risk. You know, part of what all the schools are doing is looking at. So if they haven't got an education, health and care plan, they will obviously have what we call a graduated response. So if their young people aren't attending, if they are showing anxiety or health issues, if they are disengaging, if they are struggling, all of them will have early support from the school, and if they need it, early help from a wider set of people. So what my team bring is the specific work really from year 10, 11, but there's a whole host of work that is obviously prevention work that is taking place in schools right through that will be addressing.
Thank you. I do see Councillor Wilson first. Then I come to.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Councillor Sheikh, for coming here tonight and answering questions. And thank you, Chair. We talked about there's roughly 207 young people in Swindon. What is the social economic background of these young people? I mean, what generalisations can we make about who these children are? You mentioned the risk register. Do they live in a certain part of town? Do they come from a certain ethnic background? So what general characteristics describe it? We can describe this group.
So they are overrepresented in areas of social deprivation. So our wards that we would identify as having higher numbers of socially deprived families, they are definitely overrepresented, and that is linked to the schools that are in those areas as well. So we will know by school where our needs come from, which wards they come from. In terms of ethnicity, the majority are British white. In terms of other ethnic groupings, so minority ethnic groupings tend to do better than our white groups. In terms of what else we know about them, I mean, NEAT is linked to families who are unemployed as well. So when we look at our supporting families data, where we look at the wider, households that have got unemployment, it's really interesting in the Get Britain Working stuff. One of their metrics they've given us to address is improving household income. So not the education, employment and training in unemployed households obviously linked to household income and poverty as well. We know that the majority of them don't have high-level GCSEs, so and that they are overrepresented by exclusions and being at the our education other than school provisions as well. So that's kind of the sorts of things we know.
In the presentation, you mentioned also special education needs and mental health issues. Is that a big percentage?
I mean, for this group, not as many, the 16 to 18 need, not as many as the care experience, but there's less with the mental health, more with a fear of failure, a lack of confidence and resilience. The SEND is interesting. We don't have overrepresentation 16 to 18 of young people with EHCP, but we have quite significant overrepresentation of young people on what we call SEND support. That means they've got SEND needs, but it doesn't meet the threshold for a plan. In fact, when I was looking at the data last time, I think it was 10%. It was quite significant more. And so our early help team do a lot of work with that group, and we are working with them to look at, well, what's happening here with this SEND support group. That would be the group often that get excluded, to be honest, and have challenges around the other things. So we know quite a lot about them. Yeah.
On a similar level, you just mentioned young people with lack of confidence. Would that include young people with physical disabilities or health problems?
Well,
or generally are they well catered for?
so at 16 to 18, if they've got a health problem or a learning need that is significant or a physical need, they would have an education, health and care plan. And as I've said, for those age ranges, right through to 19, they do very well at staying in education. The challenge we have with that group is what happens to them after they leave education. I think in the report I referred to sort of improving the pathways for those young people. So they're staying in education, but we don't always have clear pathways into paid work. And for some of the groups, accessing paid work is really challenging. People with autism, for example, and learning disabilities. That's why we introduced the supported internship, which we now offer here at the hospital and at will offer at Amazon. But that is a really good start. And the new supported employment program, Connect to Work, will also offer support, place and train support. But that sort of those programs need to become the norm. We need to grow those and develop those. So the expectation and culture in Swindon is that people with a disability with those needs can do paid work. Quite a lot of them do volunteering, but the national and local ambition is that they have access to paid work as well.
Yeah, as you say, there are volunteering options. For example, the Swindon Hub have been great with young disabled people, but it's actually found that paid work, which is a problem, and going on to their 20s, 30s, and 40s. I mean, sort of I don't fall into this category, but my own health problems have affected my ability to work. Just one final question before the chair tells me what we did the last time. Of the 207 young people, I mean, are any involved in criminal activity that you know about? Or
Actually, I haven't included the stats from our youth justice system. I could get them. It's not large numbers, but there will always be, a handful there. We do have a worker that works specifically with young people YJS, and they do pretty well if they get the right support. Quite often they are quite, to be honest, entrepreneurial young people. They can be quite, we tend to do quite well with support of getting them into a job, and particularly if we work well with the employers with them and advocate for them. But there is always a handful in there that will be working with our youth justice service.
Thank you. Sounds like you've got a very comprehensive program. So.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report and the presentation. I found it absolutely fascinating. And to be given this depth is excellent indeed. Some simple reflections, I think, first of all. The new data system. It worries me considerably that we put the system in and it's caused us so much problem for you and your officers, and as a result of which, although I see the figures of not known going down, it has, if you like, skewed figures, basically, and wondered how we got into that situation. I won't ask quite answer, but it just sort of does trigger something in the back of my brain that says, how on earth did we get to that situation where the data system is causing that much problem for you and your fellow officers? New College, I see that, New College is, I would say, a cornerstone in our educational establishment here, but as you rightly say, a number of the programs are full and there's a limited number of options. And it seems to me, again, that is holding back people that we could work with if there was more capacity there. And I know some of the things that you've been doing within your program, helping them in that area, but it is very much, it seems to me, New College, despite what you've been doing, that we don't have that ability to actually get more people in there. I noticed that the in-learning figure has reduced over 2 years by 3%. And wonder what was behind that. I'd like to know more about the risk of meat tool, RONI. Do you call it Ronnie or is it RONI? And the RAG ratings, how you choose who's going on the RAG ratings, green, red, etc. Good to see that the care experience needs has fallen. I think that's good. You mentioned pathways to employment being, and I think that's absolutely key. It really is. How do we get people from there and help them along those stepping stones into employment? I think all of this, there's almost someone that comes to me and says, that's where we've got to put our resources. I'm concerned that the DWP joint working is not consistent. That does concern me. But I do know that you've actually been doing some work in that area. Are there splits in here for male stroke female? Is that information available? That would be really interesting. I noticed today that obviously there are many significant things that are holding people back. One of those that really spiked my interest was that many young people want a quick fix to a well-paid job. Training a friend. Is this sort of the social media and influence? I want to be an influencer, and I want to rule the world rather than actually going through training to get there. Just a simple. I just it's sort.
I mean, that was particularly with our care experience. It was quite interesting, really, working with the personal advisors, because they were feeding back and starting together. So there was, I mean, within that group, there were a cohort that didn't really want the sort of, I mean, not everybody wants an apprenticeship. Like we see, and I see apprenticeship as, obviously being for young people in lots of ways the ideal, because it turns a job into a career and gives you qualification. But there are quite a number of young people who just find that too much. Because if you think about what it is, if young people haven't succeeded in school and then they want or do have real fear of failure, we're asking them to do a job, and we're asking them to do a qualification which they might have not succeeded in before. But there were quite a number of young people that did want quick money, quick fix. They didn't want to do lots of training. They wanted instant gratification, to be honest. They wanted instant sort of, and they just wanted work, any job. And that's quite difficult to unpick in a way, because some of that's about ambition, some of that is about fear of failure. I think with the programme, there's complex reasons, but there were a cohort that didn't want that. What's been interesting though is when we've offered this, almost a year on now, we've offered this experience within Swindon Borough Council, and we've had good take up of that. So it does show that, and this obviously it's an apprenticeship pay, but I think one of the things that worked for that is we didn't make young people go through lots of hoops. We negotiated with our HR colleagues to not have the recruitment. What we were looking for was real want to work, motivation to work with us and to learn and train. And the response to that was good. So I think sometimes having to go through all the recruitment hoops is quite challenging for young people. It is quite good. People think it's going to be online and easier. Young people use their phones, but they're not always used to keyboards, applying for stuff online.
I think you're absolutely right. And the thing that you mentioned here, an online offer would need to accept. And I think that we live in that digital online world, and that resonates with these people.
I think there's so much that we can offer them. It's not just, yes, it is about getting the pathways right, and it is getting the children to be having the aspiration to where they see themselves going forward. But some of these children come with a background where families don't have aspiration to be getting a job and to complete the education and looking towards what's across the fence. And I think that's the sort of pathways that we've been trying to make sure we have to be able to help them out. As much as we would love to get it done quickly. There is no silver bullet to all of this, and like many other local authorities, we had a visitor from the DFE who was talking about his own journey, being a caregiver himself, and he had to work hard. He came from a background where he saw his father abuse his mother, and she died in his hands, and he had to leave. So he's gone from foster care, and he's gone through his own battles, which many of our children do. So there is the emotional and mental burden that these younger children are seeing, and it is a longer process for them to be able to come out of them, to then understand that they don't need validation to feel approved and that they can do it. But I thought that was a very inspirational story from him.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think the buy-in, as all of us with the corporate parenting rules that we have, is, like Sally mentioned, is how do we break the red tape? How do we not have so many hoops for these particular children who lack aspiration, don't have the options, and how do we get them basically agreeing to what we would like them to be doing?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, because I think this is absolutely fascinating, and I know that we're doing a huge amount of work, which is very impressive. So, thank you.
I mean, I will just comment on the new college. I mean, don't think we can expect one provider to be the solution for all our young people. I think that's kind of where I'm coming from with the DFE. So there is a process for us to work with the DFE to bring in new provision and new resources. And you know, New College and other providers are supportive that we need a range of options for our young people. So the DFE are looking at what resources are coming into Swindon and whether they think we have got a case, and then we will do a business case to bring more resources in. Because we shouldn't really, you know, we shouldn't be having to fund statutory education that is funded through the DFE. And we'll work with them. Other areas have said it's quite complicated to go through the process, but that's what we will do with the DFE, bring our evidence for why we need additional places and resources and something different.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barry.
Chair, just looking at the data, obviously the unknowns at 523, we go back and look at going back from 2022, looking high upwards. Even then, comparing those data, they're still significantly higher than the national averages too, and it's virtually doubled. And there's 523 people we have no information about. Does that not concern you? And off the back of that, the rise that it is, clearly, I would say, it's not working. And therefore, have we looked at other councils that are doing, what are they doing differently to achieve that? Because I wouldn't say Swindon is bad, right, in our town as a whole. And this to me does ring concerning alarm bells, and especially seeing the spike of it. You know, we have 523 people. We don't know what to do. Well,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
that's a big concern.
Yeah, I think for me, for us, it is a concern. And I think that's why the sort of working group to sort out the synergy issue has been in place and obviously is ongoing within children's services. But also we are working with other areas. The bit that we have been doing in the last couple of months is identifying other areas that have the new system where it's working. So that is why we've got the improvement I think that we have got is from working with them and working through those issues. So I think it is early days, but I would completely agree with you that we need that as being the absolute priority. So just to give you the extent of that work, you know, when we need to upload the data, we have moved people from teams to go and do that manual work to make sure it's the best it can be. Now, obviously, that's not where we want to be long term, but we have made sure that we've used the resources we've got to do that manual process, and now are working. I mean, it has been, you know, escalated to a senior level within our services to make sure that we've got our data specialists and our service leads working on that. I mean, I'm very happy to come back to you with, you know, the sort of future report on how that's going and what happens in the, you know, a month or 2 months' time, because I
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's gone kind of considerably positive. And my question to you is, obviously, I appreciate you doing some work in the background, it has spiked massively. And when do you think we'll get it back down to what the figures we can get it back down to? And do you think we'll see somewhere along the lines of national average? Because I know Swindon is slightly below national average. You would expect the figures to be somewhere around that mark.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, in terms of looking at what the work that they've done in the last couple of months, I would want to see quite significant improvements, within 2 months again. So we've seen some improvement. We've learned from what other areas are doing. We've implemented some of those things. So, I would want to see that kind of improving in the next 2 months.
So my last question is, where did it go wrong?
To be quite honest, I think the system issue is probably, if I personally don't understand that whole issue. I see it from a service point of view, and that is being a piece of work that has been done right across education to improve that. It's been a huge priority for the director and her teams. So they are certainly looking at what's gone wrong across the system and how they can improve that. There's been and not just an issue for the needs.
That's not saying it's happened nationally. That's locally.
No. I think the issue of the implementation of the new system has been a Swindon issue, but not just been a neat issue. It's been an issue across our education teams and required us to get, the director to have working group and to be working with a range of a number of our data specialists to solve it. And it has been challenging. So it does, I just want to assure you that this has been something that has been, on the risk register at the highest level in terms of children's services, and has been highlighted as something that has significant resources being put in to address.
I think, can we just note, Chair, this is a concern to this.
Can I come back on those?
Yeah.
And I just wanted to agree with Councillor. I am really concerned, particularly with the unknown and the same. I'm just wondering whether this committee can support me in any way. But the way I see it, unless we can, look into an early intervention rather than year 10 and 11, I don't think we will make a massive improvement. So I think we need to work with the schools, with the school leadership, and see whether we can build a framework where actually we are bringing to our attention that these are the children who are unknowns in an earlier stage, and these are the children who are likely to be in need, post the 11 or 12.
Yeah. And I think the risk of need indicator will help us do that. So.
Councillor Howard.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I started reading this on Thursday and I realised we didn't have the appendix. And thank you very much for passing that on. I have to confess, I haven't had a chance to read it today. And I knew on Thursday I wouldn't get a chance to read it. But so I won't have any questions on that. But if I have, I will forward them. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you've covered this. But one of the things was going to be about, I understand about schools and we have the responsibility for places. And then we talk about the colleges not having waiting lists. And we've covered it now, but I didn't know how we work on that, whether it's our responsibility, their responsibility, how it works. But I think we've covered that. So
it is our responsibility to ensure there's sufficient places, and that's why after last year, when we realised New College wasn't offering sufficient places, we said to the DFE, "There's a gap here. Work with us to make sure there are sufficient places." So it is us that has the duty to ensure. But obviously that means us working with others
providers,
to achieve that. And that's our challenge to the DFE. If one big provider can't offer that, we need a wider range of options. So that is why we are putting that challenge.
Just wanted to add a quick point on the back of the data here for the needs. and the unknowns, particularly in line with COVID. So if you look around, I'm sure you all know what the impact of COVID has had. And we are seeing a rise in the needs. So this number is not to say, yes, the system has errors. It is a system that other local authorities have also experienced with errors. And I know that we are working with the local authorities to be able to understand how we can make this work for us now that we have it. But the rise in needs is actually quite sharp and has been going up every year since coming out of lockdown. And that is a main factor that we have to also understand and contributing into the figures we're seeing today. Jeff, I just want to add that, please.
And on that basis, as you said, this seems to have huge increase in need and also see in terms of unknown as well. I'm just wondering whether the committee wishes to take any deep dive in.
Can I carry on? I'm only on point one.
Okay.
Which kind of covers it, where you're going to go maybe. Because I know that the recommendations are anything to follow up, and I think we've touched on one of mine, which was 3.8, following up the SEND, how that looks and how we're going to address that. I think we've all touched on that. I think some of the discussions, we need that one to come back. So I was going to propose that one, and then 3.15 about how things are changing. Again, I thought perhaps we could have that to review to see how successful the taking on this running, tool and looking that way. I thought that was another thing I was going to suggest. Sorry, and then my third one is 3.2.4.8 about the corporate parent strategy, the paid internships. You've already said you're going to let us know how that goes. I also wanted to ask where those roles are. Is there a likely job at the end, or is this? I would hate not to be a tick box thing, but I really I understand from the young people's point of view why they want a job and they want it secure now, and also have we got any other employers on board really, and where they are. Yeah, so where they are in council, how would I get a job at the end, and any other employers. And can we have it back, which you've already said going. Thank you.
Do you want me to answer the question around the opportunities in council?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and other employees. So it's new. So we are just confirming where those placements will be. The way it should work is that you match. You do a vocational profile with the young people when they start around their strengths, what they're interested in, go through the different opportunities that we've got. Initially, we are planning to offer all the opportunities in Swindon Council, and that's really so that we can offer them the job coach support and have support in-house with their personal advisor and others. And there is a range of placements. So with the internships so far, I went to Waterside today to have a tour and a discussion with them around what placements they can offer. So Waterside are offering placements. We've got placements in Lydia's house, in customer services, in my team, in the team which supports adult learning, in our, I always forget the name of it, our marriages and our births department. In there, they are in there in campus support. So a whole range of teams, with the expectation from the chief exec that every service area will consider opportunities. That's our sort of commitment as corporate parents, our ask and the commitment from the chief exec. I mean, in terms of us offering, the aim is, and we've been quite clear with the young people, there will not be employment here for all of them, but our aim is to support them after that period to make sure they can get a paid job. So some will be here, the hospital, as part of their anchor, their commitment with care leaders want to work with us. And I think Hamilton is interested as well in this element of the programme. So other employers are interested. I think we've got to make it work here first and test the prototype of what we're doing and then roll it out to offer other opportunities. But yeah, the aim is to support them to get paid employment, not all necessarily here.
No.
Yeah. And then we ask, other employers.
Roll out other interns for the next year.
I think if we show the way, we are learning quite a lot with the supported internships to young people with education, health and care. And I think our services are gaining confidence and gaining, the experience of what it's like to support somebody with different types of additional needs. The care experience tend to have other different needs than the young people with the HDP. But I think it's building capacity within our service areas to be good mentors. It's what we're aiming to do.
Any more?
No, that was my three.
Okay, and in that case, a quick one from Councillor Parry, and then let's.
Yeah, I was just going to say about the point Kevin made about the unknowns. Just to give you an example there, the island is going to be stacked up. Southwest 2.1, neighbours 3.8, Swindon 8.7, the previous year 3.9. Go back to the data of the national ones going back. It doesn't stack up. It's a massive spike. We must acknowledge that. Just accept that, and that's why I do welcome that we actually bring it back in this further, because this is a massive spike in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, I can respond to that. I mean, I think the complex of what is happening with COVID and a number of things is there is definitely evidence that young people have more complexities and there are more issues with young people. Hence, they are talking about the national need issue. But I think here, there is a particular issue that we've got with the unknowns. We can see that, but we can see that that's why I asked for the 3-year trajectory. There was some improvement, but obviously that this year hasn't helped. So, I think a deep dive into that and coming back with it would be sensible.
Okay. So, can I suggest to the committee whether we intend to take a deep dive in terms of our unknowns and a deep dive of where we can begin the need, particularly as it is a fairer committee, and as Sally had just said, it seems that most of them are from the most developed areas as well. And can I ask for volunteers? And obviously, this is something I work ongoing because this is the last meeting of the year, and all I can say is I have to recommend it for the next year to carry this forward. So, shall we take the volunteer at the next meeting rather than this meeting? Because
You should, sir. You don't know where we come.
yes, absolutely, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Sally, for the report, and thank you, Councillor Sheikh. I know you've got a bit more to do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also on that note, can I also say, if we can also bring in on the same task force, how we can improve, our people to come earlier in our, because if you look at one of the cases, case N, she is 22 and she came in our council in 2017. By then she was already 17 years old. Had that child came in our control in the earlier ages, maybe that the council would have been in a better position to help her.
Yeah, just on that, whilst I was very much welcome the papers, it's much better to get them when they're actually supposed to be sent out rather than just like.
Yes, I agree with that. That was my
I didn't get time to read them, sure enough, yeah. So, they should be circulated before.
But I guess if we'd have looked at the papers when they arrived,
Yeah.
then we would have noticed that we didn't get it. I looked at it Thursday and realised we didn't have the appendix, but I could have looked at it earlier.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've looked at it and I didn't even ask the question, so let's leave that.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5, which is review of education provision for young people where English is not their first language. And I do have Natalie White along with Councillor Sheikh.
Thank you, Chair. Natalie White is the interim head of Quality of Education, but once again is very concise to explain everything that has been done to date, including these statistics and and introduce the report, and again, similar to what we did before, just take questions as and when towards the end of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've been in the local authority now for almost 2 months. And so this was a very interesting exercise for me to review the education provision for young people where English is not their first language. I think it's important to remember that this is a statutory duty not only for the local authority to provide education for those children, but also to for schools to be providing under the an education for those children under the Equality Act. Apart from that, you have an increasingly diverse local authority. That's a great thing. And as such, there needs to be sufficient provision for children and young people whose first language is not English, because without such provision, young people will become excluded from opportunities, work, school, and just their general community. Just a bit of demographic data, 24% of pupils in Swindon have EAL. Now, that's quite high, and it's against a national value of 21.8. Wide variety of nationalities too, particularly Afghans, Brazilians, and Ukrainians, which so quite a mixture of cultures, languages, which can provide an excellent, exciting cultural base. The greatest number of children who have English as another language are in primary school. In primary school, you've got 27% of pupils in Swindon who have EAL, higher than the English average, and is rising higher than that over time. The Swindon value is much higher than that of Southwest average. So I'm thinking of using that as a platform. This is the kind of response that there has been. We'll talk through that in a minute. Interestingly enough, the response that Swindon has provided seems to have provided good results, good outcomes. In Key Stage 2, 65% of EAL pupils achieved the expected standard in reading, writing and maths against 64% in England. So it's higher than the English average. Key Stage 4, slightly lower, but only very slightly. But 70% of EAL pupils achieved 4+ in England, in English and maths, that should read, against 69.7 in England. So again, hitting about the national average. This interested me slightly more than that, because the suspension rates for pupils with EAL in Swindon was 3.9, lower than non-EAL pupils at 15%, and permanent exclusions also lower. The support for EAL students I found at all levels in Swindon. In school practice, and I've been out to see some schools, maintain schools particularly, the practice in primary schools is very exciting. And if you get a chance to go out to a primary school, ask them about it, because they know what they're doing. They not only make the children, even if they have a second language, feel part of the community, but they also embrace their particular cultural heritage in a very systemic way. They show that they value different cultures and different languages. And there are, as I've outlined, a vast array of techniques that schools use to include children and to teach children within the context of the school. Most EAL students should be and are attending mainstream school. Because actually immersion is one of the safest ways of learning any language. But while that is happening, it's important to recognise where that child has come from. So if they've come from Ukraine or Afghanistan, there might be other issues that they're struggling with, and a lack of communication at that point can be difficult. So the schools are aware and they take these things into account, and they are trained in a trauma response. We at Swindon provides resources from the council where English is not their first language, like online around the Bell Foundation. Now, the Bell Foundation is like the gold standard in working with children with another language. And I know that a lot of the schools, particularly primary schools, work very closely in that regard. They're online, there are resources for parents, there are resources for practitioners as well. And in terms of training, you have services like Virtual School who train in terms of that trauma response that some children can have if they have only their own language and they're learning English, if they've also been through some sort of ordeal. The EPS also works with schools on this area as well. The head of education welfare has recently released a training document for schools in regards to the use of interpreters, and I've included a number of aspects of that within the paper. You may think that that's a fairly straightforward area. It is not at all, and needs to be kind of carefully and very professionally approached. Translation apps, I think, are the way of the future, personally. And I'd love to see greater use of them. But there are some, sometimes it's just not possible, for example, in terms of dialect. You have lovely schools like East Witchell Primary School, who is aspiring to be a school of sanctuary, as Swindon is aspiring to be a local authority of sanctuary. They have Refugee Week in June, and they share forms of literature and experiences, and they invested in the Show Your Heart work that I think the Harbour Project was doing. So how we show kindness to others, and particularly refugees and refugee communities. As well as this, As well as this sort of work, we also have post-16 courses for young people where English is not their first language. And one of the things that I noted in the data that I found very heartening was the fact that ESOL classes and the reviews that they've done of ESOL classes provided to adults in Swindon have an excellent positive outcome rate and benefits, not only for the adult, but also, of course, for their children. New College Swindon courses have courses for English for speakers of other languages, as do Swindon Adult Community Learning, and I've listed a whole variety of courses that they provide. And moving Swindon towards becoming a city of sanctuary, of course, provides a number of support mechanisms and opportunities to practice that English by bringing communities together where they feel safe, where they won't feel judged. And of course, the Harbour Project also provides that level of support. I was kind of bowled over by something that the Harbour Project said in their documentation, that, you know, some of this is about support often for people who have no family, so will be your family. I think that's extremely powerful for people who don't have a family. And if their commitment is at that level, that is, you know, quite a unique thing in my experience. So this is an overview of what's available, a very quick overview of the impact of what is being provided in Swindon. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Councillor Sheikh, do you have anything to add or straight to the questions? Thank you. Natalie, just to start off with a few things, which I know in certain areas, it seems Swindon doing a little bit better compared to nationally. But in terms of, you mentioned about primary school, secondary school, and post-16 as well. Do we have the figures for what percentage of people actually start from the primary level, and what percentage of people start from the secondary level, and what percentage from the post-16 level?
I'm not sure, but I can check. But at the moment, and I suspect over time, you're looking at a bulge in primary, particularly. I think for secondary and post-16, you might get a bit of a bulge at post-16, but primarily you're going to get it at primary. And I think that's a good thing because primary schools are the ones that are going to be able to wrap around children. I will find out for you.
And can I just confirm that we are not including those who are born in this country, even though they are from minority community? Are they classed as the AL?
The children would have an assessment done when they do attend, based on that assessment, and if there is a need, then that will be fulfilled. If English is a primary language, or even if it is secondary, at least we get confidently they're able to access the support that they need. I don't think I could be correctly, but your question was specific to children being born here and whether they are included in the data. Is that correct?
Yes.
Those children are included in the data. If they're not speaking English when they're coming to school, obviously that's a dead giveaway. But also children who have migrated, so in year, so to speak.
And when we talk about the national outreach, the benchmark, for example, you've got 70% of the EAL achieved for in primary level and 64.5%. In terms of those data, do we actually put a different level because they are from the minority community, their English is not their first language, or is it across the board? So what I'm saying is, in terms of the benchmark, so 64% have achieved maths, reading, and writing.
At the end of Key Stage 4, yes.
And that's what
GCSEs, yeah.
That's for everyone.
You're talking about the end of Key Stage 2, yeah. So 65.1% of EAL students achieve the expected out of the percentage of Swindon children.
And what would that be for children who are born, British white students? What level of achievement would they be in? Do we have a different target level?
Find that out for you. I compared it to we compared it to the English as a benchmark.
Thank you. And in terms of, you've got 70% of EAL achieved 4+ in English maths compared to 69.7% in English. Again, although it's good that we are seeing the national level, but the question from me is having 4+ in English maths. I just want to know, whether these children are from a particular area. So in other words, if we were, I know there are plenty of schools in Swindon whose results are always high. But if we are seeing, schools like, let's say, London, other examples where we have a massive diverse communities, if they're not improving year on year, then obviously these people will always have 4+, they will not get 8+. So what are we doing to ensure that these schools within those areas are improving year on year?
I can certainly find out the figures for you if you believe that maybe, sorry, a particular area may be at risk. We do have that information.
Thank you. But fact is, I mean, that's not a particular area. So what I'm saying is where we have higher deprivation, so in areas with higher deprivations, where we have a secondary school, primary school, are those the schools who are achieving below standard, or are they achieving well within standard? And if they are achieving below standard, how do we ensure that these schools are improving year after year?
Do you mean the schools or the EAL children?
EAL children, yes.
Okay, so I can find that information out for you and bring it back.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Hardy was first, I think.
Okay. Just a question. I know many always talks, but on funding, is the £595? Is that does that kind of meet the needs of the children at that time? And then my question also is, why is there such a big jump? They go up to senior school, because like it's like those kind of numbers that different to my days of government, like on the funding, how it kind of moved. So it seems it's low level to start with and higher at the top end, whereas like years ago the data just kind of went high then went low then back up. So it kind of sort of like is out of kilter. I just wonder, like when you look at that money, you probably I don't know, that 600 quid. Probably for one TA, pension race is probably about 30 children for one TA. So is that adequate? I don't know. Probably wouldn't say no, I wouldn't, but it just seems quite low level, and it just seems a little bit imbalanced when you think that actually the foundations would be at the beginning when you get that child to really get the foundations, the beginning part, and then obviously moving on. It just seems a little bit slightly off.
I think the funding, well, certainly the funding we have no say in whatsoever. But I think for a small primary, if they have a number of children, and for example, Lawn Primary has literally dozens and dozens, they'll pool the funding and then create roles specifically designed for those children and their parents too. So they're communicating well with the parents. In terms of secondary, there can be different struggles at that point. So you've not only got the, I'm developing into a teenager, but I'm developing into a teenager with two kind of visions of myself. One of my family and my original ethnicity, which is very important to me, but also being part of Swindon and being part of the world that I find myself in. And sometimes that itself can cause some young people difficulties, being caught between some worlds. And if they have gone through trauma of any description, it tends to really come out at teenage years if it hasn't been. It really kicks in then. So the additional funding may be very useful at senior school. I think that what primary schools provide as a matter of course, the nurture, the small classes, the wraparound care, it almost is designed to support that kind of, those sort of, overcome those sort of difficulties anyway. So while I don't think the funding is adequate, no, I'll be very honest. But that's national government funding at the moment, and that's what they manage with. So
just wanted to add, I guess the complexities of not having English as a language when you're in secondary school poses more barriers.
Mm. I mean, that's the point I was going to
complexities
make. If, I know it is fun, but if it was kind of at the beginning and they got it enough at the early stage, and they wouldn't be facing the barriers in the secondary school. So you kind of unpicking what you've got at the beginning. That's
No, I can see your point, definitely, councillor. I'm thinking of also some of the children that come into school when they're in secondary and they have English as a second language. That can be really tough because then they've got a whole bunch of specialist subjects they have to deal with and a lot less wraparound care.
Can we just quickly look at the table, 3.1 point of view? Again, just looking at the numbers, it's roughly as the children carry on through the education system. And whilst the funding, which I do get Councillor Parry's point, is trying to get that early intervention piece early, but not all children present with English as a second language in primary. They will come through with families who are reunited, through secondary again, and that's something that we do see happening throughout generational difficulties of people and families separated. But it is a valid point. National funding formula is slightly different, but the numbers are coming down for children who need that support. I guess I just wanted to bring everyone back to that table, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is something that we've wanted to look at for a long time now, so thank you for bringing the paper to us. I think it's fascinating and something which really does fall within the remit of this particular committee. Are there any notable differences between local authorities versus academy schools?
What I can tell you, what I have figures on, is the number of children in, like EAL children in different schools. Mm-hmm. But in terms of outcome, I'd have to drill down and see if I can find that information.
Okay. Okay.
I can check for you.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, as the higher numbers that are currently in primary roll through, as you suggested, are the additional challenges, because there we're starting to get into teenage years, etc., are the additional challenges recognised and are they prepared for that number of people? So the numbers are quite significantly larger at this moment in time. Are the secondary schools prepared for that challenge that will be coming towards them?
I'm going to be very honest with you, councillor. As I've only been in the local authority for just under 2 months, I've only had an opportunity to visit all the maintained schools, and they're all primary schools. I wouldn't like to speculate on the secondary schools and the challenges that they have with children with English as another language, but it does add complexity. There's no denying it.
And the attainment figures, are they available for male versus female boys and girls?
I'm sure that we could do that.
That might be interesting.
That's a good question. I just wanted to add quickly, I visited Lord Manor as part of their city sanctuary work, and I was absolutely blown away. And like Natalie mentioned, I visited all of our maintained schools as well, but the phenomenon that was happening in Lord Manor that week was just, it honestly gave me goosebumps, not just because I'm a mum and I have children and I have residents in my ward where English might not be their first language, but that school had a very cohesive environment for children to thrive. They had a buddy system, they learned about each other, they had a safe space for new migrant children. And even in that week, these children were celebrated like they were any other normal child coming into any school in England. And it was really a matter of pride for them. So even though we haven't got the data, Councillor Elliott, I know from my personal visit of the school that it was very evident that they do have the wraparound support that they need, and the school was able to provide that for the students of one manner.
Thank you. Final one for me for note is you single out eloquently East Whitchell, what they're doing there.
I believe in the report I give a couple of examples
You
of
do,
different.
but yeah, East Whitchell would know about it. Are there lessons that we can learn, and are there ways in which we can, if you like, broadcast that out to bigger cohort of schools?
I've got to say, I've been in education for 30 years and all over the country. You have some very, very lovely maintained schools with excellent practice in this area. She said, relational practice, understanding what the power of the relation between students and the teacher and the student, and how that can embed a sense of worth and belonging into the students. So we may come from different places, but we're all valued, we're all listened to, we're all cared about. Just that sort of practice, it's heartwarming to see, and you can pretty much throw a stone at any the group of maintained schools, and you will see lots of excellent practice around for these children.
Howard?
Thank you. Yeah, just nearly 3 years ago, we had our first Ukrainian family in, and we had a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old at the time, and much to their mum's slight reservation, they went straight off to school because mum wanted to keep them back to let them learn a bit of English. And actually they thrived on it. It was great, and the school was everything you say. I remember one of the neighbours' kids said how the younger one ran into the big sister's classroom. She probably wanted to hear the familiar language and just be with somebody. And we spoke to her teacher, and she was like, no, that's fine. We've told her that's fine. If she wants to do that, that's absolutely fine. And you just think, yeah, that's what you'd want for your kids, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
And now the older one, who's just going to secondary school, like she speaks proper RP English. The other one's got a bit of a Bristol twang, or a bit of so that's quite nice. And they both speak really good English, and they're correcting. I suppose it depends on the teacher, but it has been a joy to see. And I guess my worry, I think primary is a lot easier, isn't it? I mean, I tried to pick up French, and I only missed a year of it at secondary school, and I never got French. So, and that's not even but so. I have hugest respect for the children that are learning in another language, and it is good to see that that those in secondary school who are coming in are doing so well. And so thanks to everybody, really, I guess. And another thing that worries me slightly is the Ukrainian community have a community around them, whereas some of these children probably very much are on their own, aren't they? And thankful for Harvard to have, maybe they can meet with other people that they can speak their language in. It must just be incredibly hard, and yeah, hats off to everybody who's supporting these people, because we want them to have the best education and then be able to fly once they leave. So.
Absolutely, and thank you. And in my experience, counsellor, unaccompanied asylum seekers dedicate themselves to education often. It's only the trauma that gets in their way, or practice that's not feeding them. So the fact that things are clearly, there is something happening that's working very well.
I just wanted to add, Harvard do a lot of work, brilliant work for the children of migrants, not just for them, but for parents as well. I know that they have set up these to have English, maths being taught, music as well, at boardroom. And some of the feedback from some of the migrants who they welcomed, these are young adults who have successfully now trained themselves up to be those mentors and to be those teachers, to be able to help and share that knowledge with the newer generation of families coming to Swindon. So that's something that I think we should really applaud, and the work that they've done with us as well.
Yes, and this level of practice may be part of the reason why there is an increase in the number of these children coming to Swindon and families.
Yeah, well, I wasn't saying that particular point of partnership. I mean, those who are under the umbrella of Harvard project, I mean, they are under umbrella of Harbour project, but those migrants who are coming new in this country, my understanding is they have to live in this country for at least 3 years before they can enroll into an ESOL. Otherwise, they have to find a private provider.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean,
Is it a minimum of 3 years, sorry?
Sorry,
Is it a minimum of 3 years, Chair, did you say?
I think they've got to provide a 3-year minimum requirement that they've been in this country for 3 years. And that's those who are entering this country legally,
Yeah.
but English is not their first language.
As in, they need
3 years
to
residence
remain
visa.
3 years.
oh, I see what you mean.
Right,
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, leave to remain.
Yeah. I'll find out.
But they've got to show that they've been in the country for 3 years. That's my understanding, but I don't know.
Yeah, can we have that clarified? Because that,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely, I can find out.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just to reiterate what Councillor Elliott said, I'd be interested in seeing how boys do against girls.
Yeah.
And whether that could be in any sort of nationality groups and how those groups interact with the rest of society. Some nationalities or ethnic groups which have struggled to learn English, you find with children.
Again, Councillor, I've only been here for less than 2 months. So I would suggest, in my experience from here in other local authorities, that there are a couple of things that you need to be mindful of. If a child isn't picking up, particularly when you're talking about younger children, if a child isn't naturally picking up English when they've been immersed in English, there is a possibility, and maybe their own language, they're not doing very well in their own language, their native language, then there's a possibility that they're struggling with some sort of special educational need. It is harder and gets picked up later than other children. That the child might not be struggling with the language and may be struggling with an educational need, and you have to be really thoughtful about that. But the schools are used to that. That's something that they're aware of.
I guess you've worked in this sector a long time, but are there any groups which have struggled with picking up English? Leaving aside special educational needs and other things, are there any?
No. The groups that struggle with English, like ethnic groups, there's no ethnic group that struggles particularly with English. In my experience, the young people that struggle with English are often the ones who have been traumatized badly and who feel a need to hear their own language as a matter of comfort.
Okay, I think one thing that could affect development of children's language skills is, are the parents out working, for example? For example, if one parent is stuck at home with childcare duties and cooking and other things, do you find that where someone's out working and mixing in the local community, they do better at picking up languages?
If the parents are picking up the languages, the children will do it faster.
Mhm. And what do you do to, for example, parents aren't in say, work or mixing that much in the community, immersed in English? What can you do to help the parents pick up more English? Because that will help with children.
That's where the schools come in. If the schools have a number of children who are in this position, then the schools will go out of their way to make contact with the parents. And particularly at primary schools, of course, the parents have to come in and collect their children, which is a perfect opportunity to start having a conversation with them and try and draw them out. They have primary schools have events, food events, celebrations of various sorts, and they are invited, they are coaxed, they are drawn out as much as humanly possible, because we know that being part of a community is a far healthier way of existing, not only for the children, but also for the parents.
Right, thank you for answering that question. I asked as diplomatic as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from any members? No? Well, honestly, what I would say is this is about building a fairer Swindon. And what I see from my point of view, what I wanted to see is where there are schools in the mostly deprived areas, where there are students who are attending on those schools. How can we monitor that these schools are performing, better year after year? Because what I'm guessing is where we've got 4 classes, it may well be that those schools have more students with 4, or possibly 5. But if those schools are not improving in 7th and 8th, then those students will never be able to go into higher education. And if they don't go into higher education, then we will not see any improvement in those areas.
And
So on that basis, I'm just wondering whether this committee wish to look in. So or I can equally leave it to you to bring a further report to see how improvement these schools are making.
what we can look at is mapping the education, the different regions, different groups of schools, parts of Swindon, and look at how they're doing in comparison. It won't be me, councillor. It will be the person that's taking the substantive role as a head of quality education. But I can certainly, James Stewart, and I'll certainly pass that request on to him.
Thank you. Thank you. In that case, we shall leave it at that in this particular business and move on to our next agenda, which is the work program. Some of the work program which we've already done, and today is the final meeting of the year. So you don't only to note. And then we've got item 7, which is the request for action and information. Again, this is to note, and unless anybody got any particular question. Councillor Grant.
It's just following on from there was a meeting of the cabinet plus the chairs and vice chairs of the policy committees immediately prior to this meeting, and I think both the chair and the vice chair of this committee were in agreement that it would be a good idea if those 2 individuals, plus myself, plus the corporate director, who covers the Fair Swindon mission, met between now and the new municipal year to discuss the way forward for the Fair Swindon committee. I think it's fair to say, and I think both the chair and the vice chair were honest enough to say that it's possible that there needs to be some more direction from the cabinet and the corporate board on the work that the policy committees are doing, and I agree with that, and I think that that we possibly need to focus on the Swindon plan, which is the whole reason why the Fair Swindon Policy Committee has been formed, and take it forward from there. But and if I may, Chair, could I be cheeky and ask the members of the committee, how effective do you think the committee has been this year in, and what do you think the purpose of the committee has been?
Members?
Do you not think you've been effective at all?
No, in my opinion, look, I think it's been effective to a considerable degree. But as you rightly say, I think there are some directions that we need from the cabinet members. So when we've looked at this policy development committees, my understanding was there will be a number of areas where the cabinet member will be sponsoring certain works through this committee. And from my point of view, I don't think that has actually happened. So whatever we have done, it was based on our working program.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chair, I think you're right. Now, I only became what's pompously known as the ambassador for this committee sort of halfway through the autumn, Christmas last year. And I think that it's understandable that you have determined, because no one's told you otherwise, what the definition of Fairer Swindon is. And you've gone ahead and focused on what the committee thinks it is. I think that what's lacking, and this is not for the committee, it's more cabinet, is that we need to work more closely together and to determine what this council wants to achieve. And I think that is the purpose of my meeting with Lawrence and you and Kirsten Nelson, to try and get some direction. You need to be involved in the decision-making process within the council, and I don't think you are at the moment. That's what I think. And
I think you're absolutely right. We need to make a lot more meeting between the cabinet and myself and yet we speak to remain the chair of the activity.
More too, mate.
Each year.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim. And I think actually emphasising and it echoes what we were discussing earlier on. I think if you look at the metrics of the various committees, this one has actually achieved a lot during this year. And I think we should certainly think of that as achieved a great deal, and that's good news. But the conversation that we had prior to this evening, earlier on, was that in a sense we were finding our own opportunities to look at things, and perhaps we were lacking that strategic clarity, which I think will come, and I really do welcome that opportunity to sit down with yourself and Kirsten and to actually define much more clearly the direction we will go. And that is for the committee. Obviously, we can't predicate, we don't know what's going to be happening next year, but I think that will make the committee even stronger going forward. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Wilson.
Councillor McGrath, on the stuff we've discussed in this committee. Sorry, I'm just a bit tired, so my brain and not working very well together.
You don't have to speak if you are fine.
No, that's all right. It's all right. I mean, I've got chronic illness, so you know.
No, I'm just giving you the opportunity.
How many ideas have you taken to the cabinet from this committee? So they talked about it's in the Build a Fair Swindon committee, and you know, it's a good idea. Has anything been taken forward to cabinet?
And I think my recollection is that two policies from this committee have now been enacted into council policy. That seems to me, and I think one of the things that the committee and others need to think about is what exactly, you know, we've got a cabinet and they're supposed to come up with policies and whatever. Where is the policy committee's role here? And how far are you discussing policy? How far are you scrutinising what the cabinet is doing and the council is doing? What is? I mean, I think this is the arguably where we need to. What is the role of the policy committee? And you know, I think, you know, should you be looking at sort of a much what themed thing? Chair, you mentioned quite a lot tonight about areas of social deprivation, and those areas of social deprivation are essentially what you talk about every time you meet, because they're the ones where the problems, the problems are. So, do you want to look at a wider themed approach to the Swindon plan? You know, there are three themes of the Swindon plan: safe and stronger communities, improving health and well-being, and improving educational attainment skills. And you want to sort of, you know, focus around those three things.
And that's basically what we have been doing. But the fact is, it's something we have done as a working program rather than something coming back from the cabinet itself. So we have been working on those particular programs. But in terms of obviously coming up with policies, I mean, if we had a better direction from the cabinet, then obviously we would have been in a much better position. But yes, I mean, throughout the year, those are the policies which we've been discussing. We have been discussing in terms of improving health, mental health, dentistry.
I'm just, sorry, Kevin,
Yeah, I welcome what you're saying, actually. When you say this policy development, I don't think if I'm being critical, we have really done that. I hear what you're saying, actually, kind of crying out, asking to do. Yes, I think you should be more kind of working alongside you. And I think if you do come to these meetings, because I always come to scrutiny meetings. So I think that if I'm honest, I'm critical. We probably do more scrutiny. Quality development, and that's the point that you're talking about, is actually shaping the way we deliver these things and making that change. And that's where I think, if I'm honest, and that's no major fault of anyone as such, but that's where we lack that in this process. And I think that helping shaping that to create a better policy, enable you to deliver that is what we should be doing.
I agree totally with that. If I was sitting on your side of the fence, I'd be saying, well, this essentially is a scrutiny committee. Isn't it? Yeah, you get reports and you argue, you question the cabinet member or the officer. After you've done that, what happens next? And I don't know the complete answer to this, and I think this is what we need to think about collectively, is to how we can be involved constructively in the formation of policy. Would it be, for example, as I think someone said about one of the items tonight, does the policy committee go away and find out what, Sunderland Council does about such and such, or, Wrexham Council does about such and such, and bring those things back to the policy committee and then feed into cabinet and other policy making places. But I mean, that's what we need to think about going forward.
Sure, it's very simple. How do we create a policy that makes a robust policy that delivers a better outcome for Swindon? That's clear, isn't it?
Am I allowed to have a comment? Yeah. Just quickly. It's a very good question. Using my external hat on, what in my mind would work if I was reviewing a policy would be to look in-house, perhaps see where you could add value to improve things like you have today. The officer, the cabinet member takes it away. We compare or benchmark with another local council that has a similar policy. We understand what their gaps are. Now, this might take time. I'm not sort of saying it's going to happen in the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks. But the aim of the policy committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, is to review whether the policy you are reviewing in that report is fit for purpose, and it is fit for purpose for the next 10 years at least. And I think that is the main aim of what the policy committee should be. Yes, you are allowed to scrutinise and see what the gaps are. How do you add value to that policy in making sure it is building a fairer Swindon? And if you ask that question in everything that you do, I think you'll naturally fall into a habit of checking, okay, is this policy fit for purpose? You have your own ranked sort of sheet and questions as to what you want to ask, and you make that policy work for Swindon's residents.
Yeah. And on that particular point, the policy may be fit for purpose, or is the policy fit for purpose for across the board? If you are going to make a policy, fit for everyone, is that policy actually fit for everyone? That is my question. You've got the education policies, and I think the policies are really good, but it does seem that in certain areas that there is a lack. Is that a policy gap, or is that something else?
It's slightly tricky with schools because we don't have a lot of maintained schools. No. Yes, we do have an overarching responsibility for all of our students. But again, within your remit as a policy committee, you could call in one of the schools, like I know the children and adults do. You could look at other ways of bringing other stakeholders into the meeting. And this is something that we've spoken with Councillor Adam Cover and Councillor Chandler as well, is how can you give the direction, not just to us, as corporate parents, which the schools are as well, but you can call them in also in your meetings.
I'm sorry, I won't go down the route of who covers children's services. That's for another time.
Okay, well, in that case, I think, shall we just close the meeting for tonight? Because
Just a final thing, can the chair and the vice chair ask the committees somehow what improvements could be made to the committee? And
well, in that, can I ask you all that question now then? Can you actually?
well, I think it's better people go away. and think
Yeah, no, we should go away and feed it back to me.
Yeah,
What
I mean,
building has worked
If you
out.
want to tell cabinet what to do, it's like some of us may have some different innovative ideas how the committee could be more effective and generate policy, actual changes in the borough council, and not just be a talking shop that takes up 2 hours of our time every month.
Chair, I mean, I think what Councillor Wilson said is something that needs to go across all three policy committees, you know, and legal feedback.
Thank you. Well, I close the meeting.